comment or question comes from Patrick Beckschafer. I think that's... You know I'm the world's worst person pronouncing people's names. And this is in response to the Isla S2400 Intimidating, a video I did in March 2021. And he writes, haha, one of my first synths has been the Waldorf Microwave XT and a spectrals from Raditech. Those bent my head. Took me literally years to fully understand both. The SP is a gigantic and to be honest, a head scratcher. It has some learning curve, but once everything is in flow, you can do so much with it. I'm currently chopping beats with it. Drum samples come from my Digitac. A real treat for those two to be together. By the way, I enjoying your quirk-free, over-quirk-free channel and your nice British backyard. Warmest regards. Yes, we don't have big backyards in Britain. Not unless you have lots of cannoolies, which I don't have because you know I am broke. Yes, the S2400, I found that a really steep learning curve. A lot of people have really sort of jumped into it, but I suppose it depends on how you make music. And that's probably the reason why I kind of struggle with the S2400. Because I'm so used to playing a keyboard and not basically sampling clips and looping clips and stuff like that. Which is kind of the concept behind the whole sort of MPC Isla Instruments S2400, EMU, S1200. You know, that's kind of that sort of psyche. So yeah, I did find it really intimidating. I do own a number of equally complex synthesizers, I have to be honest, and they've gelled with me far faster than the S2400 has. As I said, it's just a different way of doing things, and I think that's the reason why I've really struggled with it, because I'm just not used to that way of doing things. Whereas, you know, I suppose if you come from a slightly different background, you know, and you don't know how to play a keyboard, it probably gels far faster. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. The next comment or question comes from Minimoog in response to Muse Receptor Round 1 to the Clone, a video I did in February 2022. And Minimoog writes, thanks for the video. It really helps knowing what to expect. However, the motherboard in my receptor was an Ausis A7V8X-MX SE. I'm shocked. This means I don't have to worry about SATA 3 compatibility because basically there is no SATA 3. No SATA. I will probably look for an ATA33 or a SATA converter. And this kind of emphasises one of the problems with certain hardware. And Muse amplifies this quite well. I'll come back to that in a sec. But what version? No, basically what I said was, what version do you have? I thought the Receptor one was all based on the same MSI board. So how wrong was I of that? And then later units were based on other boards. So that may be wrong as well. Although I do know that the boards changed as the units went up. So this is news to me. Are you sure someone hasn't undertaken surgery on the unit? So I did a little bit more research, and there were version 1 Muse receptors that did have different motherboards on them. The early versions didn't have a SATA port on them at all, and then they put a SATA port on it, but it didn't it wouldn't recognise SATA drives. It wasn't enabled in the firmware, and it was only when they got to the version of the motherboard that went into Receptor 2. So all the version 1s, Rev A, Rev Bs, Rev Cs, all had different motherboards apparently. And then the Receptor version 2, that had another different motherboard, as did the Receptor VIP, as did the Trio, as did the Quattro. So as they went up, the motherboards changed. So although they all ran Linux as the OS on the motherboards, there were subtle differences, and you had to make sure that you were on a version of the OS greater than 2 and possibly 2.1 for the later versions. Otherwise, basically, it wouldn't run properly. So, yeah. But it illustrates something that was kind of common around this point in time, and it was funny enough. I've got a Dell computer that's sitting just under here, and I was involved in the I used to buy computers commercially as one of the jobs I did years back, and this particular company, Dell, managed to get themselves off our tender list on the grounds that they wouldn't commit that the motherboard inside, if you were buying 1,000 units, Dell wouldn't at one point commit that 1,000 units would be purchased with exactly the same motherboard in them. Now, if you're issuing 1,000 units out commercially, you want to make sure that every one of those 1,000 units has exactly the same configuration on it, because trying to support 4 or 5 different configurations over those 1,000 units is a support nightmare. So you don't want to do it. And companies like Compaq, I don't think they were quite HP at the time. Number of other computer manufacturers who were out there at the time would guarantee that you could buy 1,000 units with the same motherboard in them. Anyway, that's a kind of a aside.